There's something strange in the neighborhood. Who you gonna call on that half-broke payphone? There's something weird, and it looks pretty damn good. Who you gonna call? A random roster of batshit crazy superheroes? Dial H. Sakamagi! I like it when absurdity is used to great effect, whether it's in movies or books or comics or theater. I'm a big fan of the absurd, and that's what this is. It's quite absurd. And when I was reviewing the Book of Elsewhere by Keanu Reeves and China Miéville, I reread Dial H for Hero, and I thought to myself, I should do a video on that because I really love this comic. It has some flaws, but it's pretty awesome. And I think this is one that not a lot of people talk about, even though at the time it created some buzz. So I want to take a look at it today and rant for a little while. I'm not a comics completist by any means, but I decided to look into a little bit of the history of Dial H for Hero. In the 1960s, Dial H for Hero appeared in an anthology called House of Mystery, and it ran for about 17 issues. The headliner before Dial H for Hero was John Jones, the Manhunter from Mars. Dial H for Hero was written by Dave Wood, with art by Jim Mooney, and it focused on Robbie Reed, a highly intelligent teenager, who may have the greatest catchphrase in all of comics history, which is, Sakamagi! Sakamagi, for God's sake. That alone. Dial H for Hero was then resurrected in the 1980s, and they had kind of this nice little gimmick, which was the readers could submit their ideas for heroes or villains, which would then appear in future issues, sometimes only in a single panel. The cool part was that you could get your ideas into the comic, and you'd get credit for your creations, and you'd even get a special t-shirt. But the bad news was that DC Comics then owned your property and all the rights to it, which was kind of a crap deal. The writer and artist on that series were Marv Wolfman and Carmine Infantino, both legends. In the year 2000, Mark Waid did a Silver Age Dial H for Hero throwback with art by Barry Kitson, and actually the cover was drawn by Jim Mooney, who was the original artist. In 2003, it was relaunched again and canceled again. Fast forward to 2011, when DC released its New 52, all brand new stories that were all rebooted. The entire DC universe was rebooted. Some characters got new origin stories, or at least were updated. Some were kind of changed more than others. And one of the announcements in those 52 new comics, was Dial H for Hero, or as it was shortened to, Dial H, written by China Mieville, the weird fiction novelist. And in this collection, there's an afterword by China Mieville, and he talks about how DC Comics would come to him every so often and ask him to work on a series. And he would always go back to Dial H for Hero. And they kept saying, how about this, how about that? And he kept saying, how about Dial H for Hero? And finally, when the New 52 launched, he got his chance. I was actually a little confused when the New 52 came out because I had been reading 52, which is the 2006 series, which is something that I don't want to talk about in this video, but it's really amazing if you ever get the chance to read 52, not to be confused with the New 52. If you know anything about China Mieville, you know that his imagination is very weird. You know that this comic is going to be super weird. His imagination is a kaleidoscope of obscure history, mythology, the occult, existential horror, and the decaying remnants of the junkyard of pop culture. His comic book writing is pretty good. It can sometimes be a little clunky, but it's fun to see how he plays with language, being a novelist, mainly. His dialogue mostly does the job. It's not as quippy as a lot of writers, but it gets the point across. It moves the scene along. I do wish it dove a little deeper into the characters sometimes, but, I don't think that's the point of this comic anyway. A few times I felt like maybe an editor should have stepped in, like when the general of the Canadian Army plays with words and obscure subphylums of arthropods. I've heard that China Mieville is pretty loyal to the source material, the little that there is, and that he put some Easter eggs in here for the true fans, which I am not because I've never read anything except this version of Dial H for Hero. And so all I can say is that I had a lot of fun when I was reading this. I laughed out loud. I think rereading this might be a little different experience. You might see more things, but also the surprise factor is a big part of the enjoyment of this, the first read-through, I think. Because after all, the characters are quite simple, and the plot is real basic, even for a comic book. That would be really the only downside. So what's it all about? Well, our protagonist is Nelson Gent. Talk about an everyman's name. He's an ex-boxer whose life has fallen apart. He's extremely overweight and a chain smoker. And he gets sucked into a little bit of the underworld through one of his friends. And he accidentally discovers a phone booth that is half broken. And when he dials a certain number combination, he becomes a randomized superhero. I love a protagonist who's just a total schlub. I think of like Arthur Dent from The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, or Philip K. Dick, like any Philip K. Dick story. The first arc is my favorite by far, and there are a few minor spoilers that I'm going to go into now. I'm not going to have any major spoilers in this whole video, so don't worry. But if you don't want to know anything at all, I don't know, maybe don't watch the video. So Nelson Gent, the first time that he transforms, he becomes Boy Chimney. And this is more of a creature or even a monster than a superhero. He's an otherworldly being that has skin made of bricks and the ability to use and command smoke, and also to ride smoke. An important thing to note is that his thoughts become fragmented. As Boy Chimney beats up a gang to save Nelson Gent's friend, Nelson himself seems to be conversing with another consciousness and getting carried away by it. We get the impression that Nelson Gent's consciousness actually prevents Boy Chimney from killing some of these henchmen that are attacking his friend in the alleyway. It feels less like Gent is transforming into a superhero than almost like a kind of a symbiosis. I'm thinking of Venom. After some time passes, he changes back into the worst identity of all. We also get to meet Roxy, or Manteau as she's known. I hope I'm saying that right. She's also very uniquely conceived. She's an older character, she's been at this dialing thing for a long time, and she's also been researching the whys and wherefores of the dial. Manteau actually means coat in French, but she doesn't wear a coat, she wears a mask and a cape, so it doesn't really reflect her superhero identity. But Manteau also brought to mind portmanteau, which is when you create a new word from two separate words. I'm thinking of brunch, or even the word motel, which way back in the day was made from motor hotel. So portmanteau, maybe she has this duality. So no matter what superhero she changes into, she always keeps her mask, her cloak or cape, and her wig. And so she's always Manteau. And that allows her to keep her identity. She remembers her name, Roxy. She keeps her identity very solid at the core of this kind of swirling identity crisis, or these fluid superhero identities that come and go. And Nelson does not have a costume. He just allows whatever he dials to change him, and he begins to lose himself a little bit as more and more superheroes enter his consciousness. Heartfelt moments between the characters occasionally crop up, unexpectedly, between the chaos and the absurdity. You can also appreciate some interesting mysteries, like what may or may not be the ruins of the lost city of Atlantis, or cults that worship the rotary dial telephone. And there's a new villain, the Centipede, which is pretty original, and he has a really intriguing power that feels fresh and exciting, especially when Mieville doesn't dwell too much on how he got his powers. He just has them, okay? Just go with it. No, but it's this simplicity that's both good and bad. I mean, on the one hand, it's very freeing, and it allows a writer and artist to just play and do whatever the hell they want to do. But on the other hand, I did wish at times for a little more of an anchor and a little more of an emotional weight or something to hold on to personally in these characters within this wacky chaos. Like, visually, there's a lot going on, but plot-wise, character-wise, not so much. But, God, I do love that zany art. There's an idea that's not completely explored that I really liked about heroes and sidekicks and the relationship there and what it means when two pieces come together to make something greater. The villains are not necessarily what you first perceive them to be. There's small changes in their backstories, and are they really as evil as we perceive them to be, or are they just misunderstood? There's a villain named Ex Nihilo that turns out to be a nullimancer, which is a kind of a sorceress of nothingness. She's able to conjure and control emptiness. Her plan involves channeling an ancient monster called Abyss. It's a kind of a sentient universe composed of nothingness, but at the same time containing universes. Mieville also reintroduces an alien named Squid, and any longtime readers, or just people who are savvy with Wikipedia, will recognize as first appearing in the December of 1981 issue. Squid and Abyss appeared together in that issue of Dial H for Hero. I really loved the first arc of this story. I thought it was really fun. The plot's real basic. The character development is not much, although it's only like 6 issues or something like that, so there's not a lot of time for character development. But then, starting with issue 0, which goes back in time, and you find out that these dials have been around for a very long time. That issue was okay, but the art was not my favorite. I'll just say that. Drawn by Riccardo Burchielli, who I'm not familiar with. It has a real kind of a sketchbook quality, and I don't know, it just... the story itself is completely bonkers, which is fine, but then the art was kind of confusing, actually. The first few pages, I didn't know what was going on. I thought I knew what was going on, and then I was confused, and I went back, and I reread it like 3 times, and then I finally got it. As opposed to Santolouco's Mateus Santolouco, he's a Brazilian comic artist, and best known for working on IDW's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. His art is the best in this book, in my opinion. It's dynamic, it's never confusing, you can follow the panels and the page layouts really well. Also, all of the covers are by Brian Bolland, and he's just a phenomenal artist. He's best known maybe for The Killing Joke with Alan Moore, the Batman story. If I saw that in the comic book store, I would immediately buy it because I can't resist. The stories that follow in the second arc are pretty good. The art is great, Alberto Ponticelli, and these kind of work on multiple levels. Like on the one hand, you can just sit back and laugh, or you can nod at the comments that Mieville is making on the distorted racial stereotypes that comics history is full of, but he still doesn't give the main characters much personality. I was a little disappointed. I really wanted to see more from them. I wanted to see little moments that told us really who they are, and for example, Nelson Gent has been struggling with, his woman left him, and his friend is missing, and he's in a terrible place in his life, but we never really get a sense of what he's going through. And Roxy also, she remains kind of a mystery. The only real arc for them is that they have to learn to work together, which is a nice arc, but I just didn't feel like I knew him that well. The Chief Mighty Arrow issue, it's very much a commentary on the racist stereotypes and the difficult history of comic books. But the thing that I liked about it was it takes place almost entirely within an apartment. And nothing really happens because Nelson wants to go out as Chief Mighty Arrow, but Roxy won't let him because, she's worried he's going to offend people and it's going to be this big scene. And so Nelson's just pacing around and he's bored out of his mind. And we, the readers, are also getting kind of frustrated. I actually like the fact that I got a little bit frustrated with this story, the same as the characters were. And also there's a kind of a cool theme of like the power of not participating. Maybe this is a minor spoiler, but if you don't like multiverse stories, I'm sorry to say that this might not be for you. As the story goes along, it does become a multiverse story. And we find out where the dials come from and what they mean, and other beings in other dimensions that have used the dials and why. And you get to meet a group called the Dial Gang. that's traveling through dimensions. So I hope that's not too much of a spoiler, but if you don't like multiverse stuff, or if you're tired of the multiverse, then, be aware. And on that note, my favorite character in the Dial Gang is Open Window Man. All in all, I think it ends too soon. I wanted more. I really wanted more from the characters. I wanted to see more batshit crazy superheroes. This is a thin collection. And, it does wrap up. It does try to complete the arc. I felt like the writer and artist were probably scrambling at the end when they knew it was going to be canceled. They really quickly try to wrap things up, leaving a few loose ends, and it's a little bit anticlimactic in that way. But they do try hard to give it an ending. I think if it had gone on longer, there would have been more time to explore the characters and see even a bigger picture of what was really going on. In that way, it kind of could have been something closer to Planetary. I don't know if you've ever read Planetary, but toward the end of Planetary, there's the jump ships. And they use these jump ships to travel the bleed, which is the area between worlds, between dimensions. And I really wanted to see something closer to Planetary with this, where at first the characters are very mysterious, and then you get to know them, and you get to find out who they really are, and you're kind of maybe misled a little bit as to who you think they are, and then it's finally revealed, and then the world just gets bigger and bigger, and more exotic, and more crazy, and more psychedelic. I wish I could keep on with the adventures of Nelson and Roxy and all of the crazy, the Dial Gang and the Centipede and all of these wonderful, wacky, zany characters. And, I'm complaining about the lack of character development or the lack of a detailed plot, but at the same time, maybe Mieville meant it that way. Maybe it was just an homage to the pulpy comics of the Silver Age. That very well could be possible. He's not trying to be Grant Morrison, although I would say that those two share something in common. Speaking of Grant Morrison, China Mieville is not as good with the snappy dialogue and the kind of true psychotropic quality that Grant Morrison has. I feel like that guy's just hallucinating all the time. For example, when Nelson and Roxy are fighting the Centipede and the Fixer, a lot of it just involves them punching and kicking. I felt like if this were in Grant Morrison's hands, there would be a lot more attention paid to how to defeat the bad guys in a clever way. I'm not a big Grant Morrison fan necessarily. I do like some of his work, especially on the new X-Men. I really love what he did with some of the ideas of what a mutant can be and what the mutant powers can be. Ugly John. I got 3 faces, mate, and they all look like pigs. Arthur was also a mutant. And these are his X-ray eyeballs. Love that pulpy stuff. Yeah, really good stuff in New X-Men. If you like it, I'm sure you would probably appreciate Dial H. Another one is the DC 1 Million. That's just a super crazy story that I think is really fun. You have characters like Umbra, Implicate Girl, the Mon Elves, Cosmic Bot, the Chameleon, Brainiac 417, and Titan Girl. Their unbreachable headquarters was invaded by a pack of extinct beasts. Or even in the issue Solaris Rising, where Superman is working with Our Man to try to stop the virus that's destroying everything. And then look at Flash. Look at the design of Flash. So awesome. Our Man, forgive me. The virus is making us all irrational. I'm thinking things out of order. Did I just say that a moment ago? No, it's been a different panel each time, Flash. So kind of breaking the fourth wall there. Grant Morrison, he can be really fun, and he can also be a kind of a pretentious asshole, wannabe Alan Moore. But I enjoy his work, and, I felt like if you like Grant Morrison, you probably like China Mieville's Dial H. So yeah, it could have been bigger. It could have had more commentary, more character development, more ingenious plots. But did it really need to? Nah, I don't know. It's pulpy fun, and maybe that's all it needed to be. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please let me know your thoughts. What do you think about China Mieville? What do you think about Dial H for Hero? What do you think about Grant Morrison, or Alan Moore, or the New 52? Anything. Leave a comment if you feel like it. And thank you so much for watching. Sakamagi!